Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to the Courage to Change Recovery podcast. My name is Ashley Lowe Blassingame, and I am your host. Today, we have Jodie Sweetin. Jodie Sweetin melted our hearts and made us laugh for 8 years as a cherub-faced goody-two-shoes middle child, Stephanie Tanner. Her ups and downs seem not so different from our own, but more than a decade after the popular television show ended, the star publicly revealed her shocking recovery from drug addiction. That's my shock. Even then, she kept a painful secret, one that could not be solved in 30 minutes with a hug, a stern talking to, or a bowl of ice cream around the family table. The harrowing battle she swore she had won was really just beginning. In her deeply personal, utterly raw, and ultimately inspiring memoir, Unsweetined, Jodie speaks about the double life she led, the crippling identity crisis, the hidden anguish of juggling a regular childhood with her Hollywood life, and the vicious cycle of abuse and recovery that led to a relapse, even as she wrote her book. Finally, becoming a mother gave her the determination and the courage to get sober. Hers is not a story of success or defeat, but of facing your demons, finding yourself, and telling the whole truth. Jodie's most recent work includes starring in multiple Hallmark Movie Channel movies and Fuller House, a sequel series to the wildly popular Full House. The final season of Fuller House aired on June 2nd on Netflix. She also co-hosts a hilarious podcast, Never Thought I'd Say This, with her best friend Celia Behar, where they tackle the truth and taboo about parenthood. We loved getting to speak with Jodie, and we know you'll love hearing this interview too. Thank you so much to Jodie for being here. Oh, she is amazing. Her story is amazing. Her truth is amazing. Absolutely loved having her on here. I know you all will love her as well. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. If you're not new to the podcast, welcome back. And episode 57, let's do this.
My older one just started middle school this year. So, this is just like the worst thing that's ever happened in her life, which it is up until this point. Not, you know what I mean? She hasn't had to survive that many horrific things, which I need to keep reminding myself, because sometimes I'm like, I know it sucks. Like, get over it. And then I'm like, they haven't had to deal with tragic, you know what I mean? Like, I've lived 38 years and done some real dumb shit. So like at this point, I'm like, we got to stay inside. It's not that bad, you know, but they're like, that's the worst thing ever. Oh. I got called the killer of joy last week, so I feel like I'm doing my job really well.
You were called the killer of joy?
The killer of joy. I took a bow to that, which they did not find funny.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
I was like, you're right. I am the killer of joy, here to suck all fun things out of an otherwise not fun time at all. So yeah, that's what I like to do, guys. Just, be an asshole and like steal every moment of fun that you have.
Well, I'm super glad that it's your fault that COVID's happening, because I was looking for someone to blame totally this whole time.
Yeah. I mean, you and a few others. It's my fault. So here I am. I have caused COVID. According to my children, it's like, they get it, but I mean, it's hard. It's hard to explain this to kids. It's hard to explain this to adults. I didn't think was the case, but I'm
yeah.
Shocked.
Oh yeah. 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 Never cease to amaze me. Never cease to amaze me. Yeah. So my twins are almost 3.5, and they know that they're cooties, but they don't understand. So like we're having conversations about germs. And so they're like, oh, well, are there germs here? I'm like, yes, but they're good germs. So we talk about good germs, bad.
Right.
Oh my God.
Right.
I'm not prepared
and
for
kids,
this.
It's like trying to be like, don't touch your face. Don't do it. Like when they're little like that, it's impossible.
Oh yeah. And then the mask
kids ate food off the ground in line at Disneyland. Like that. I mean, that's just what toddlers do. Like, they're gross. Children are still gross. Children are gross, but they get slightly less disgusting. No, that's not true. That's actually not true. I would like to say that they do, but I just found a bag of chips in my daughter's laundry. So they don't get any less disgusting.
Yeah. I feel like, and little boys, I don't.
Yeah. Little boys are,
Of all the things that are coming my way, less disgusting doesn't feel like it's on the docket.
Definitely not. No, and like something about tweens too, they love to just bring all the food into their room, but never clear any of it out.
I did that.
So I'm like, why is there like a half-eaten burrito in here from yesterday? Why? It's gross. It smells in here. Do you not smell that when you walk in? No. Why are you so critical? I'm like, because it's fucking reeks in here. It's disgusting. Why are you so critical? Why are you so mean? I'm like, yeah. I can't do anything right these days. That also comes as you get older, or as they get older, is that just everything you do is wrong. I breathe wrong. I speak too loud. I do like everything is just
everything.
Right. And I'm like, great. I'm glad the feeling's mutual because you annoy the shit out of me too, kids. So
So are they, so like, I hear people talk about this where like their parent did something cool in that other people think is cool or recognized for, and the kids don't give a shit.
Yeah, no, my kids don't really care. They used to like coming to the set of Fuller House because, you know, the other kids were there that they were friends with that were on the show. So like they loved doing that. They loved craft service. And it was people that they'd known for years. So they would come and whatever. But like one time they came and they got in a fight in the schoolroom, like a physical fight in the schoolroom with each other, which one of the kids on the show has to tell me in the middle of a tape night, like an audience tape night. He's like, okay, so here's what happened. And I was like, I'm going to kill my children. I was so pissed. My mom took them. I was like, get them out, take them out of my dressing room and done. Cause I was like, you guys, like, I get this is fun and it's play and it's relaxed and you know everybody and I kind of can do whatever I want here, but you guys can't. And you guys embarrassed me. So, and then I was like, you guys can't come. And they were distraught.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But no, my kids don't like, as far as watching the show, they don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think they like getting to the age now where it's kind of cool. I think that like people know who their mom is. Like they're kind of, I think starting to like enjoy the cachet of that, which I'm like, just stop it now. Like, don't be that person. It's obnoxious. So yeah.
Oh man. Teenage. Yeah. It's always complicated.
Right. I'm trying to explain like why, without scaring them, that, you know, look, more people in the world know who you are.
Yeah.
Because of who I am.
Yeah.
And so like I had to have this conversation with her yesterday because she had some missteps online, as they do when they're 12, because they don't know how to keep themselves safe. And we had a real conversation. I was like, Zoe, if you don't think people know who you are and know your name and can find out, like, you can't put certain things out there. You can't, you know.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh. I was like, yeah, when you shoot a video, you have to be careful that it doesn't say where you go to school. Don't have a school sweatshirt on. And they don't get these things. These are things that me growing up, I've had to think of my entire life, and they've never had to.
Right.
You know, so it is without being like, hey, you know, there's weird, crazy stalkers out there, but being like, look, you're not just some anonymous kid. And that was what my mom always had to tell me too. Like, you're not just some anonymous kid out in the world. You know, people know you and people know them, you know.
So like, you're not just some anonymous. So like, okay, we're alcoholics, right? And like the attention, we want to be known, like we need to be seen, right? Whatever that means in a relationship. And so like being not anonymous and being like, so there's like, I need to be seen by somebody, right? And then there's being seen by the whole world. Does that fill any of that void that we were born with?
I don't have that void. I like to not be, to just sort of blend in. I mean, I love what I do and I love performing, but I am not a person that like needs to necessarily stand out. I'm not that person that craves that attention. Ironically, I do this because it's what I love, but like, I actually don't love the sort of
part of it,
other stuff that goes along with it. Most of my friends aren't in this business for that very particular reason.
Yeah.
Not because I don't like people in this business, but just because most of my life is so very normal.
Yeah.
That I like to be seen that way. I like to be seen that way as opposed to something else. But it is hard. I mean, it's been hard. You know, I found in Zoom meetings online during this pandemic, but I don't have the same ability to just sit there anonymously and not have somebody take a screenshot of a meeting that I'm in. And, you know, that's super annoying. Or record what I say, or, you know, so.
Yeah. Even like if you change your name and all that, you know.
I mean, the second I put my face up there, everyone knows. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people in LA know I'm in recovery anyway. And it's one thing, it's uncomfortable enough to walk into a new meeting. When people are like, oh my God, and as every alcoholic, like, you're like, oh my God, they know, like everyone knows, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's hard enough. But then, you just sit there and people are staring at a screen full of faces for an hour, and it's just weird.
Yeah. It's interesting. When the whole, there are two times where I've thought about like what it would be like to get sober in the public eye. One was when, now I'm going to forget his name, Macklemore.
Oh, Macklemore.
No, Macklemore. Yeah. And talking about relapse and then when Demi Lovato, and I just thought to myself, like, I had, I lived in LA, so I had connections through the program to, kind of hearing some of the stuff that would go on with sponsorship and just stuff that was gnarly and stuff that honestly never even occurred to me because it's not my life. And I remember thinking, like, what a complication. Like, you are.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's hard. I will go and speak at a meeting, and then I get a ton of people come up to me afterwards who are like, oh my gosh, will you sponsor me? And I don't know if it's because I had a great message and they want what I've got as far as recovery, or they just want to say who their sponsor is. So, and it's hard because then you feel like, well, how do I give my number out, stay connected, be in touch with newcomers in the program without, and there have been times when it's like, oh, okay, now I see maybe
it doesn't feel right.
Right.
Yeah.
And usually I will sponsor people who are like a friend of a friend, or, it's one of my dear friends in the program that's like, this is a newcomer that I met and they specifically wanted to introduce me, stuff like that. But it is a whole different set of rules and circumstances and things that you come into the rooms with. And I remember that, one of the things that they always talk about in the rooms is, alcoholics always think everyone's talking about them when they come into a room, that they're, and
right.
You're like, and I was like, well, my entire life, every classroom I walked into, that was the case, not like in a way that it was, I'm not fucking, I'm not saying that, but at the time when I was a kid or whatever, growing up or, it's different. And so you do walk into a room and you hear whispers or people talk, or you're, you just know that you're more of a spectacle than other people. And so it doesn't, you're like, that's not true for me. That isn't my experience. That's not, that's been different for me. And then you have to combat that with not allowing that to be the thing that you're diseased onto and goes like, well, and that's the thing is you have to find, like, for me, I haven't been as comfortable on Zoom meetings. I've spoken at a few of them, fine, but I've had to find other workarounds, like who are the people that I connect with in my sobriety, like, and look to and rely on the different areas of the program that I know, sometimes you just have to emphasize certain things a little bit more than others.
Yeah, I think it's with everything that's gone on is so destabilizing. And I think, and it was actually something I was talking about with someone this morning about how we're all destabilized in different ways because our lives looked different, our sobrieties looked different. We had some of the same tools, but we probably used them differently. And we are going to have to find, given this situation, a new way to use those tools that works for us. And so whatever that looks like. So it makes complete sense that that you wouldn't go specifically to, I'm sure that even in the LA meetings, meetings.
And there are the meetings of people that I know, it's all finding what works and what's comfortable and what, know, and I also, I went through a period where there were only a couple of meetings that I really liked going to here in LA because I was going through a really ugly, tumultuous ex-boyfriend situation in the room. And I just didn't feel safe in a lot of them. And so, it's just, we all have to do those things that for whatever reason or another, we go like, okay, it's a workaround. We have to, you have to be able to be malleable in your sobriety in a way. You know what I mean? It's not always going to look a perfect way. And I used to really be guilty of that, in multiple sobrieties where I would, if it didn't look perfect, it was like I'd just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, I'd relapse or the whole thing would, get screwed up because it was like, well, I'm not doing it perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my perfectionism was a huge barrier to me really living comfortably sober.
Yeah.
And that was the difference, is I was sober, but I didn't know how to just relax into it. So it was like, if it wasn't perfect, or if I didn't have all of the, the quote unquote right things that you're supposed to have, then I just chucked everything. And I was like, well, I'm obviously not doing it right. And I think that oftentimes a lot of people feel that way in the program. And I think I've seen people with different kinds of sponsors and things like that. And I'm like, look, maybe you need to be a little, less hard on yourself. I mean, that for me in sobriety, that's been the thing that I've really had to grapple with is how incredibly critical I am of myself, and how I let that get in the way of so much of my recovery, or have in the past.
Do you think so? I read your book, which was awesome. And I wonder, a bunch of things came up, but one of the things that you talked about was, which makes complete sense. You had a job as a kid, you were working. I wonder if having to be in an environment where you're working for, the network for a living as a kid, and the being critical, being criticized was a part of the job, right? And that kid,
yeah. I think it's probably a lot of things. I think I've always suffered from anxiety. And it's funny because as my anxiety has unfortunately gotten worse over the last couple of years, I don't know why, but it just has. I don't know why this year things are going so great. But
totally.
But I've stopped and had to remember all of the things. My daughter has some anxiety issues, and she was talking to me one day about how she felt like she just felt like she couldn't swallow right. I had not remembered until she brought that up to me, that at probably 8 years old, I had the same thing and went to the doctor for it because I felt like I couldn't swallow. But anxiety wasn't a thing, and it certainly wasn't a thing that kids ever got diagnosed with, 30 years ago. And I started really stopping and thinking about all of these very significant things in my life that were a result of an underlying anxiety issue that developed over my life. And I didn't know what that feeling was, but I knew that if everything was a certain way, it made that feel better. I knew if my homework, if all the writing was really neat, if all the lines were really I'm not OCD, I don't have that diagnosis, but I do know that my perfectionism is inextricably linked to my anxiety perfectionism. Like, those two things just go together. And so when I feel like something isn't perfect, if I feel like, whatever reason my, fourth step isn't the way it is, or the way it should be, or that I didn't call my sponsor at 10 a.m. I called her, I skipped a day, it used to be, those were the things that I was like, well, I'm just not doing this. So I might as well just give up.
Right.
Because if I'm not going to do it perfect, then why do it at all? And that has been something that I, even now I talk to my boyfriend and he'll be like, that's quite a list. Like, what's on the other side of that? Like, what's the good stuff on the other side of the list to balance that out? And I'm like,
there's another side.
Oh, there's another list. That's right. Yes. Hold on. Let me get back to you on that.
Right. Totally. Yeah. It's, I think it's one of the things that's kind of the dichotomy, which is that when we're using and drinking, to many people, we look like underachievers, losers, lazy, whatever. But many of us are actually overachievers who cannot deal, who need some sort of substance to deal with the fact that we can't get it right. We can't get it perfect.
Right.
It's too much.
Right. I mean, I think for most alcoholics, there is some sort of underlying anxiety.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Disorder. And anxiety is usually a control issue. You know what I mean? And so it makes sense that the more you are controlling external things in your environment, the more you're trying to keep the insides together. I know for me, I used to struggle with leaving a dirty dish in the sink, which is great. These are great problems to have. I'm a very neat person, but when it literally keeps me up for 20 minutes trying to go to sleep because I'm thinking about what a failure I am because I haven't washed all the dishes today.
Right.
That is a very different reason. You know what I mean? It's not that is the crux of that, the self-disappointment, I think, that so much of our using hinges on, which is I want to be the best. And if I can't be the best, I'll be the worst.
Right. Yeah. That's exactly how I was.
That was
for sure.
That was exactly what I thought.
Yep.
I was like, well, I'm not like, I don't want to be perfect, because everyone had this weird assumption that because I was on TV and because I was that, like, I thought I was better than everyone.
Right.
So my thing was like, well, I'm not going to be perfect. I'm going to be so opposite of that.
Yeah. The best, worst.
And it was this weird sense of like owning my identity.
Yeah.
It was like, well, if this is the identity that you want me to have, I'm going to have one that's all on my own. And, the same thing with like making good decisions for myself for a very long time. It was, I didn't want to make the right decision because that was the decision my mom would make. And I want to make my own decision, which is a very teenage thing to do, but also a very alcoholic thing to do. Like, I will cut off my nose to spite my face because fuck you.
Right. Exactly. Well, it was funny because my mom loves Hallmark movies, right? Like she's like, and I always tease her because I watch a Hallmark movie, right? And in my head, like I've been working in the mental health, behavioral health. I've been, sober, getting sober, whatever, for so long that like I watch that and I'm inserting like, yeah, but he has this issue and this is what's going on behind it. And and so like, I can't watch something that's that clean and not see like, I'm like, this is sick. This is what's going on. They're all pretending everything's okay. So I give,
right.
Do you guys joke about that?
We totally, everyone's like and Hallmark, we're on a Hallmark movie, and you are very self-aware of what it is. It's very much like Full House and Fuller House. It's very much like a sitcom in that there's going to be some hiccups, but nothing like, how it's going to end. That you're not going to get to the end of the movie and be like, oh, he killed her. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
In a sitcom or a Hallmark movie, like nothing
right.
jarring, upsetting is good. It is like comfort food for television.
Right.
But it's true. I am, and I always laugh because I am, my mom always is like, something's wrong with you. Because I am a much darker, I don't really watch comedy at all. I watch really dark documentaries, like true crime.
Yep.
Like
the thick shit.
Let me just politics, but like politics, just all of that. Like I'm like, I don't want to entertain my brain with fluff. Like I want something I need to focus on. And so it's really funny because what I watch and what I do, that's art could not be
further apart.
Different.
Yeah, that was what I was laughing about because I was like, oh my God, she's on Hallmark. Like she's like, I'm reading the book, giggling to myself because like I totally relate to so much of it, right? And then I'm like, she managed to find roles that were literally like the world gave you this identity and everything behind the scenes was like, I am not that girl. I'm not that girl. But what's funny that I thought was funny was that you went back to Hallmark sober. So like you went back to it.
Well, it's funny because that for me, was that was actually a really big statement and gift for me, because after I wrote my book and after, I talked about getting sober and relapsing and, speaking publicly and relapsing and doing all that, I had really struggled with being able to come back from that and having people be willing to let that be the past and be, however many, over a decade ago. And it took a really long time for that to happen. It took a really long time for that not to be the first question that I get asked. It took a really long time to be able to do a Hallmark movie and be asked to do something like that. And so when I like that for me, I was like, okay, I finally...
You've shed it.
At least thought I shed it enough to a place where it's still something that's important about and that I can talk about, but that it is not the only thing that people talk about.
Yeah. That must have felt wonderful.
Everything else that I've done. It was great. And it's great. And it is, it's still, trust me, I still get asked about it. No matter how much I will be out promoting, Fuller House or a Hallmark movie or whatever, and they get told like, we're, obviously don't bring that up. Like they do anyway. And then I just sit and stare at them awkwardly because I'm not supposed to making someone feel awkward. So, it's still there, but it's no longer the prominent thing.
Yeah.
And that was always the thing that I wanted so desperately, was that, look, my sobriety and this journey is a piece of me, but it's not all of me.
Right.
It doesn't define everything. It's not the end all be all of who I am. And it was really hard and really frustrating to feel like I couldn't get out from under that, and feel like, you're constantly being reminded of who you were, and nobody really lets you move forward and succeed, because they just want to keep going. Yeah, but let's talk about the real fucked up stuff, And I don't, like I said, I love sharing my recovery, and I love doing all that, but there's just differentiations between, like, if I'm,
you don't want to only be
talking recovery, then I'm talking recovery. But exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's been a
Yeah. So you started Full House when you started reading at 4.
5.
So, okay. So,
I started reading at about 2.5.
At 2. You were fully reading at 4. That's right.
I went right into, you could set down pretty much anything in front of me by the time I hit my 3rd birthday, and I could read. And we have videos of me, like, my mom would just set adult books down and I could read.
That's amazing.
Stuff. So they always knew I was bright and smart and loved to excel and succeed and do all that. And I started doing, commercials and stuff, and fun print work and dance recitals and stuff like that when I was 3 years old, because I just loved performing. So I was like, oh, well, give you an outlet for it, But it quickly became something much greater than any of us had bargained for.
Yeah. I mean, it's awesome, and it obviously comes with all its complications.
Yeah, but I was fortunate, though, in that the set and the people that I grew up around could not have been more normal in that regard. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a Hollywood set. It was like a very down to earth family. So I do feel like, thank God, that was the experience that I had. I know that not everyone has that experience, but I and all the other kids on that show we were loved and supported, and our producers, and, we were taken care of. We were not exploited and used, and, they made sure that our well-being was paramount.
Not like the classic child star kind of deal.
Not at all, which is really, and people always ask me that, like, do you think it was because you were a child star that you were an alcoholic? And my response was always, no, not in my situation at all. Like, you have read my book, so about, I was adopted, and I had a very, very strong biological predisposition to alcoholism and addiction. And, I had a whole other set of circumstances that would have affected me. And I think I would have struggled with, drugs and alcohol regardless. It's just that nobody would have known about it.
Right. Yeah. Kind of like the rest of us who struggled.
Right. Yes, exactly.
So when did you find out you were adopted, or how did they tell you?
I always knew. My parents, I always knew. They always told me that, I was picked for them, that I was special, that that they welcomed me in their hearts, but, not my mom's tummy, and, all that kind of stuff. I think when I was about 11 or 12 was when they told me kind of the whole story about my parents' background, and just some of the more traumatic, darker stuff that was kind of the first 14 months of my life that I have no memory of, but I know that they still have, deep-seated effects on me, which is interesting when you start thinking, like, why do I have attachment issues? Oh, wait.
Right.
That's so weird. I grew up with a great family and all these wonderful connections and relationships. Like, what is that thing for me? I'm like, oh, this is that, nature nurture thing of, there will always be certain things that I'm working on overcoming that I don't even realize that are struggles.
There's a great book called The Body Keeps the Score, and I'm sure you've heard of it.
I just bought it. My boyfriend just recommended it. And I just watched the Daryl Hammond story in which the doctor's in it, and they talk a lot about that. And I actually picked it up today. I was like, I need to start reading this. But it's really interesting how our bodies hold on to
information.
So many things.
Yeah, it's really interesting. How long? So I read the book. So it took us to 2009 when you were getting sober and struggling to get sober. And it's how long? When did you get?
Well, I had gotten sober. My sobriety date is March 23rd, 2011. I had gotten and stayed sober and was right in 2011. I got in a car accident and was prescribed muscle relaxers, which I had never thought were a fun thing because I'd never taken them. And then I realized that I was just not being honest about when I was taking them, how many I was taking, and, you know, within like 2 weeks. And I went, oh shit. So that was why I changed my date and restarted it. You know, I always tell people it wasn't the worst by far relapse or, you know, anything I'd had, but it was that realization of like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's on the list too.
Throw it in there. Yeah.
Just throw it in there.
Yeah. Just staying honest. I mean, you get to a certain point, you're like, whatever it takes to stay sober, I'll do. So if I have to, there's clarity in it. So since 2011, and what is it like to get, so like me getting sober, I was a fucking hot mess. Like I acted out, like just, I mean, detoxing, whatever, but then like acting out, early sobriety, just hot mess express, just in general, like not something I would want pictures of, cameras of, whatever, like how, and falling on my face and doing things I did while I was using, doing them sober and being embarrassed. Like
sober, right.
How do you get sober while people are watching you? Or are you used to it? Maybe
I'm used to it. So that's part of it, is that there's a part of me that's just like, well, this, you know, everything that I've had to do in my life has been in public for one reason or another, whether it's, you know, marriages, divorces, having kids, getting sober, going to school, you know, whatever,
right.
Whatever it is, it's all out there. But, you know, it depends on which sobriety you ask me about.
Okay.
Which is more, but you know what I mean? When I went to treatment, I was a fucking nightmare. You know what I mean? It was awful. I was a disaster. I was also 22 and young and had never been to treatment and never really, you know, I had gotten sober before, but never really done a lot of the work. And then, you know, and then you go to treatment and then you're like, oh, wait, new friends.
Yeah.
And then you're a mess. And, you know, it was around that time that it came out, somebody at the treatment center that I was at, I don't know if it was a client or staff member, had sold out that I was in treatment.
At Passages?
And they, and they had shown up there to take pictures and do, you know, all kinds of stuff. So that was when I was like, okay, well, you know, I guess I get to do this publicly. You know, that was the hard thing, was like, I had hoped that I could just go through this privately. But, you know, if anything, having to do all of this publicly and having to make some of those mistakes and have people critique them or, you know, judge me for them or whatever, has made me, I think, that much stronger, particularly now, in that, you know, if somebody wants to talk shit about me or how I'm living my life or my sobriety or this or that, like what, like, I don't, cool, bye. You know what I mean? Like if you want to talk shit, that's fine. Then go for it. But I don't have to let that determine what it looks like, what my life looks like. You know, just because someone says it doesn't mean it has to be true.
Right.
And I tell my kids that all the time, and I forget to, you know, use it myself, where it's like, just because, you know, an ex is talking shit or saying something or telling a story or doing something dumb, like that doesn't have to be my truth.
Right. Their truth doesn't have to be your truth.
Doesn't have to be my truth. And so, you know, I just had to get real clear on like my own value system and my own, you know, my own business and my own side of the street, and remember what's my side of the street. And also that other people don't get to come and clean my side of the street either. Just like I don't get to do it to other people. Like I don't need you in, my side's clean. I got it. Thank you very much. Go over there. You know what I mean? So, you know, it's never easy.
Yeah.
It's never easy to have people feel, and to feel not only that they talk shit, because, you know, we all talk, I mean, whatever, we're humans, but to feel that they are entitled to an opinion that they get to share publicly because of what you do for a living, that somehow that's just, you invite that into your life, and that you don't get to have an opinion on them saying anything. You know? Was there ever a place where, like, you know, the people I know who are artists, musicians, you know, performers, like that's who they are. It's not even what they do for a living. It's who they are. And I wonder, you know, is there ever a time where you've thought to yourself, like,
maybe, obviously you're probably too deep in to back out, but is there ever a time where you've thought like, I don't know if the trade-off of being able to perform at this level was worth what I got with it?
Not now. I mean, I walked away. I worked in treatment for about 6 years.
Oh, okay.
So I had kind of walked away from the business. I went back to school. I got my KDAC, and then I started working. I started working as a tech,
Okay.
$10 an hour, bottom rung job, and worked my way up and worked my way up into, running operations departments, being the director of operations for some fairly large scale facilities that are, of course, not around now. But yeah, I definitely had walked away from the business and loved what I did. I worked in treatment. I loved it. It was fun. It was insane. It had sort of that same level of chaos and interesting cast of characters as entertainment in a way. Yeah. So that for me was appealing. But working in treatment for a number of years, it was the first time I'd ever really, well, that wasn't the first time. When I went to college, I got my undergrad degree in elementary education. So I was going to be a teacher and had worked, at an after school program and stuff for a little while. But this was my first real, okay, this is what I do now permanently for, a number of years. And it's always the thing that if at some point in 25 years, what I want to be doing in, 20 years is directing, writing, producing, still acting, but really moving into some of the behind the scenes stuff. Or if it all falls apart, then I would go back to school and become a therapist because I really love working with clients and doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And you'd be great at all of it and such a varied experience.
I mean,
sorry.
It's nice to feel like I learned some things about myself before coming back to this business that I learned okay, I am capable of doing other things because I didn't know if I was. I mean, that was the biggest question I think when I started working in other fields was, do I even know how to do this? I've been a performer since I was young. Do I know how to have a real job? And I do. I'm fine. I'm, I'm not an idiot. So I figured it out. But yeah, walking back into that and having kind of lost everything and lost all the financial outside shiny stuff and had to really start over at the bottom. Now coming back to working in this business and getting some of those, the cash and prizes things back that they talk about in sobriety, I have a much different appreciation for it and also a much different knowledge that I can be okay with or without it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things you talked about in the book was the struggle with relationships and, obviously having that experience, attachment issues and all that stuff is going to be a huge piece of it. You had, I think the relationship that you in the book that you ended with was Zoe's dad, but you left you were leaving Zoe's dad.
Right. Yeah. He and I split when I was writing the book, and several years later, I had gotten married again to B's dad. I have both my girls have different dads, but he and I had gotten married and were married for a couple of years, and then that didn't happen either, or didn't continue. But I definitely, and then I went through just a relationship with a lot of drama. And I think I had to do all of that and learn all of those things and fall on my face and learn my own strengths. Particularly the last few years for me have been a place of really finding out a lot of my own inner strengths. And then in finding out those things and finding out how I am okay on my own, it's just made all the difference in the world for finding and being able to actually keep and participate in a really healthy relationship.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that was, I was like, oh, okay, this is how you do it. And I also, have picked someone who has done a lot of work and really come a long way. And so I have that with somebody that we both come to the table as wanting to help the other person, and that was something I think I was always great at finding people in relationships that I would take care of. And I had to really look at a lot of those things and look at why and look at the power dynamic that it created and what I got out of it and ask myself those really uncomfortable questions of what is this doing for me and why? And that self-honesty that you have to look at when you go ew, I don't like me right now.
Totally.
Gross.
Totally.
Right.
Stay tuned to hear more in just a moment. Hi, it's Ashley, your beloved host. When I'm not hosting the Courage to Change a Recovery podcast, I'm running the recruiting department at Lion Rock Recovery. We are always looking for amazing licensed mental health counselors, along with various other sales and operations positions that pop up from time to time. The Lion Rock culture is one of collaboration, support, and flexibility. Our employees work from home offices all over the country, utilizing technology to connect to one another. We are always hiring. So if you want to have the best job ever, check out our open positions and apply at www.lionrockrecovery.com/about/careers.
So did you do a lot of that work? Like, I'm sure it was a combination, but did you do a lot of that work that like kind of when you were talking about soul, like finding yourself and being alone, did you do more of that work in therapy or 12 steps, or like, was it
both? It was a combination. I did a lot of it in 12 steps. I went back and started redoing A Woman's Way Through the 12 Steps, which
love it.
Is such a great thing for me. And I actually use that a lot with stunties, just because I find that it is, for a lot of women, we have a whole entirely different set of trauma and self-hatred that comes with it. And I find that particular book and way to work the steps is a little more gentle and soft and nurturing. And it just really helped me. So I've done that, but therapy was huge for me. And I should probably go back because, quarantine is definitely bringing up some fun things. As you get to sit in your home all the time, you're like, oh, that's crazy. Hello. But therapy for sure. And, I took this really amazing trip to Thailand and Japan around the time I had gone through, like I said, this last really ugly breakup several years ago. And we were going to go shoot in Japan. And we were going to be there for like 20 days. And I said, you know what? I've got time before I'm taking myself on a solo trip to Thailand. And I'd never traveled by myself before. I'd never been out of the country before. And I did a whole 10-day trip in Thailand by myself. And I, went to an elephant sanctuary, and which was something that I'd always wanted to do. And I got to touch these amazing creatures, and I traveled, and I, went to the night markets and the street fairs, and I did all of these things on my own in this completely foreign country. And I'm sure that there were times that people thought I was crazy because I would just like burst into laughter because I was so full of joy in a way that I hadn't been before, like joy and freedom in a way that I hadn't had before, that it was, I always say it was a life-changing trip and experience for me. And it sounds so cheesy because it's like this fucking Eat, Pray, Love or whatever the hell it is, which I never read or watched because I hate those kind of movies. So to even be like, I had like a magical trip, man, like I just want to punch myself in the face. But be that as it may, it was a magical, life-changing trip. And I found a comfort in my own skin that I hadn't had before.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that. I never thought of that, but I did the same thing. And like when you said that, I went to Barcelona by myself, and I remember it was so empowering. Particularly, there's something about it also being a foreign country and a different language. It was so empowering. I remember thinking like just going to the grocery store and carrying my groceries by myself. Like, even though that's stupid, not like anyone carried my groceries anyway before, but there was
right. But there was something about it. Like I went to a place, like
I did it.
For me, particularly in Thailand, it was like, I went somewhere. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I can't read a sign.
Yep.
I can't speak a language. Like I had a guide at times that was with me, but there were a lot of times that I was like, no, I just want to go do this on my own.
It's empowering.
And I did it, and it was awesome. And I highly recommend.
Yes, I agree.
That at some point in every woman's life, go take a trip somewhere on your own, even if it's not like, it doesn't have to be a foreign country. Go camping by yourself for a week. Like go safely.
Yeah,
obviously.
just don't go to, maybe not in like Afghanistan or Morocco, but like,
Right. Yeah. Or, don't go camping like by yourself without, anyway. what I'm saying is it's an incredibly empowering experience. And my friend gave me the book, Cheryl Strayed.
Yes.
Why can't I think of the name of it right now?
Yes. It was called
about her hiking the PCT.
Yes. Oh my God. Wait, that's going to kill me.
What the hell is the book called? Cheryl Strayed.
It is
what it
called Wild.
Like one
Wild.
word. I want to
Wild.
I'm like, it's one word, one syllable. No. And my friend was like, I think you should read this before you go on your trip. I did. And I discovered two things. One, that I never want to go on a long-term hiking trip, but also that I got the same experience. It was that same sort of, I don't know if I can do this. It's a little bit scary. I don't know what's going on. And yet moments of being so full of like joy and success and like this feeling of like, I did this. I remember driving back to the hotel I was staying at, which was I had this amazing, like my own, and Thailand's dirt cheap. So what you get there for what you pay for is like unreal. And I was in this little tuk-tuk going back to my hotel. And those are like the little things that are on the back of like a motorcycle, but they're like a little
right.
carriage looking thing, you know? And we're like bobbing and weaving through the streets of Chiang Mai at 11 o'clock on a Friday night. And there's people and it's warm and it's humid and the smell and like everything. And I'll never forget. I remember I started like laugh crying because I was like, you're so lame. But I was like, I didn't know what to even name that feeling, but it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And it was such a sense of freedom and just like peace.
Yeah.
And I hadn't had that. And it changed a lot of things for me. I still had a lot of stuff to go through over the next couple of years, but I look at that trip for me as the starting point of a very new way in which I treated myself.
It's also interesting to think about from the perspective of you can't be perfect at going on a trip, an international trip by yourself. Like there's no your perfectionism because there's no perfect way to do it. And so you're kind of letting free.
And it's also that thing of where I've had to do that in a lot of areas, like you said, I travel by myself a fair amount shooting Hallmark movies. They're all in Canada. So I, go to all over the place, but I found the love of doing that after that trip. And I just think it's so important for people to shed that, like you said, that perfectionism and go and, whenever you're traveling by yourself, I have to remind myself, like, I don't have to have it all together right now. Like, stop, ask for help, regroup, look, slow down, because my tendency, and I've had, sponsors yell at me about it. I've yelled at myself about it, is like, stop trying to look like you always know what you're doing.
Well, there's no script, right?
It's okay. Right. But it's okay. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Like oh my God, I'm lost. I don't know. I came out of the subway on the run, or I'm trying to, when I go visit my boyfriend in New York, I remember I was taking the subway back somewhere, and I don't take it all the time. I have a couple routes that I knew what to do, but this one I had to transfer. And that's what always screws me up, is a transfer. And I realized that I could ask for help. What a fucking novel idea.
Right.
But
it is a novel idea.
38 years of my life. Right. 38 years of my life. I never was like, maybe I should go to the little kiosk and be like, hey, I'm looking for this train. How do I find it? But no, my head told me, I asked for help and I don't know how to figure this out on my own, then obviously I'm not capable.
Right.
And that was so it was like this
belief system,
need for self-determination, because I don't know. I think, we all have, alcoholics in particular, have a hard time asking for help. And it's ego, it's fear, it's perfectionism. There's so many things that I have had a much better time of letting go of.
Yeah.
And I still struggle. Don't get me wrong. I'm by no means a picture of perfect mental health. But I do know some solution, and I know what to do, even if at the moment I might not be doing it.
Right. Totally.
I know.
That's the story of my life.
Right. Right. I'm like, just give me a minute. I'm going to get the solution. I just need to have this
Totally.
I'm going to get there. Yeah.
So you talk about in the book, leaving Full House. And obviously so much has changed from leaving Full House in terms of what happened with all your co-stars and which directions they went in. And then you get the opportunity to do Fuller House. What was it like to do that? And did it feel like a second chance, or was it just like, oh, this is cool to hang out with these people?
Oh, it was all of that. It was definitely a second chance. It was, I was going to meetings pitching that show with Candace and Andrea and John Stamos and our executive producers. We were, pitching it to different networks, Netflix and all this stuff while I'm working in treatment. So I'm,
Love it.
pitching this long shot of an idea of a TV show, but I'm like having to take off work to do it. And there were a couple meetings I was like, I can't make it. Like I've got a bit, I have a team meeting, I have a treatment team meeting, or I've got this, or like I can't leave. So it's just funny that I was sort of in this mindset of like, look, it would be awesome.
Yeah. If it hurts.
But I'm happy where I am, but I will put my effort into that as well and see where it goes. But it definitely felt like a second chance because it was after that started happening, just a lot more opportunities came.
Yeah. Yeah.
The hard thing about this business is that when you're not working, people are like, oh, but what are you doing right now? And you're like, well, I'm not working, which is why I want a job so that I can start working and then they're like, right, but what? So it's this weird catch-22 of like, if you're not working, you're not going to work because they want to find either someone totally unknown or someone that's hot. Like there's no middle ground.
That's interesting.
So it was a wonderful opportunity to have that door open again because I got to come back with such a different mindset, with a mindset of not that I ever took it for granted, but just, I get to have all these fun opportunities again that I didn't think would ever come back.
Yeah.
I thought I never thought in a million years we'd show again. It was definitely weird coming back to that and feeling like I had sort of jumped from one world into another.
So you had to really separate, which frankly is completely understandable. I was reading this going, oh my God, how do you, as a kid, the complexity of what you went through is insane in terms of identity crisis. I mean, we're all trying to figure out who we are always. And, you have this added layer. So you had to really pull Jodie out and separate Stephanie from Jodie for so long. Now you're back doing that. Is that in ever confusing?
No, I always say Stephanie and I are they took a lot of who I was and made Stephanie.
Okay.
So it was, a lot of who I was as a kid really influenced who Stephanie was. Thus, when I came back as an adult, they really were wonderful at listening to us and where we saw the characters having gone and having, changed and all of that. But, when I was 13 and the show ended, I was going through this, I was going through a really struggling time anyway, because, I was coming to terms with my adoption around 13, 14. It was a couple years after I'd found out the whole story. And there was, a lot of stuff that I talk about in the book about, I had gotten very ill as an infant. I had been found, in an abandoned garage, and I had, all this kind of stuff that was pretty traumatic. And so at 13 or 14, I started having that thing that a lot of adoptees go through, which is, okay, I don't feel like I'm a reflection of the people who are raising me, but I'm not a reflection of these people I don't know. So what is that? I don't know how much of it is biological parents, how much of it is my parents, and who am I? And do I want to be either one of them, or do I want to reject both of them? Or, I realized that a big part of my drinking and using that I think started at that age was because a huge portion of all that I knew about them was that they were addicts and alcoholics. And it was like a weird connection of, if they were, I am.
Right. I want to be someone
for it. But I want to be someone. And then at that same time, the someone that I was on TV was I suddenly wasn't a working actor anymore. And I also wasn't Stephanie, but I wanted to be Jodie, but I didn't know who that person was. So there was all of these pieces of, I didn't really know who I was. And so I would just go along with whoever you told me you wanted me to be. Sure, I'll be that person. I could be a chameleon, and I'm still very good at sort of floating in between, vastly different social groups, because I know how I can be, not that I'm now being disingenuous, but there's all these different facets of who I am. And I think at that young age in particular, I really had no idea what direction who I was. There was no grounding sense of identity.
Which is completely understandable given all the things.
Right. And now, coming back as an adult, like I said, coming back and having gone through a period of my life where I lost all of the fancy outside stuff and was just a normal person. When you then come back into this business, there's just this appreciation for things that I go, you know what? I can sit here and throw a hissy fit about some stupid thing that's not happening on set right now, or I can realize that this isn't the end all be all of everything and whatever, it's going to be fine. And I'm a pretty easygoing, passive person anyway. So that perspective of what's really, truly important, and that I'm here and yes, I'm doing a job and I will give it 100% and commit to it. But at the end of the day, it's okay. I don't need to, we're not, I always say, we're not curing cancer. We're just making television shows. It's going to be okay. This is not life or death. And I've worked in life or death. I've flipped clients over who are, I've seen them seizing out in the middle of family day and having, I've done that stuff. And that to me, I go, yeah, that's life or death. This is fun and it's awesome. And I'll give it 100%. But that perspective, I think, changed things,
How does parenting fit into, I guess this is a two-part question. One is, if your daughters were into wanting to be actresses, would that be something that you support? And
my youngest daughter does.
Okay, she does. Okay.
She very much does. My older one, not so much. She is more into sports and Friends right now. So anything I suggest,
right.
Of course. But she was never that was never her thing. She did a little guest appearance on the show one time, playing one of Max's friends or whatever. She is not the one that wants to perform and do all that. She loves it and she's great at it. And she actually did her school play and stuff like that. But she's not the one that's I want to be on stage. My younger one is, but she doesn't have, I think sometimes the personality traits that it takes to succeed in this business as a kid, which is, you show up and you do it, even if you're sick, even if you have a fever, even if you don't feel like it, even if your friends are doing something else, even if something sounds more fun or you want to sleep in or whatever, it doesn't matter. And I know that as much as she wants to perform and do this, I have to find other avenues for her rather than the professional avenue right now, just because I don't see some of the things that I think she's quite there yet. But I also want her to explore that and have it be something that she loves,
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's also hard, as a, working parent in this business, it's, it's hard to take kids to auditions and do all that kind of stuff too. And, so we'll see.
Yeah.
She goes back and forth. And every once in a while I tell my agent, I'm like, all right, fine, just send her out an audition. But then I'm like, no, she needs headshots and a this and a that, all this stuff. I'm like, that's a lot. My mom was with me all the time, every day. So that was what she did full time. But, I don't have that luxury necessarily.
Oh, yeah. I looked into, when the twins were born, I looked into people, were like, oh, you should, whatever. And I thought, oh, look, I have no idea what that is. And for commercials or what have you. And then I basically was like, wait, this is they're not working. I'm working.
You're working.
I don't have time for this.
Yeah, the parent that has to go with them is working.
Yeah.
And
it's a full job.
So she does, she is a singer and a performer. She loves music and all that. So she's been involved in a lot of stuff like that. But, then I also see her, I'm like, okay, you have your, whatever. And she's like, I don't want to. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
That's I get it. And I don't want to take that ability away from her.
Right.
She can always focus on this as a career, but you can't always just be a kid.
So true.
And I know that. So I will support her in, if that's what she wants to do, or go to a performing arts school and middle school, high school, whatever, do all of that. Great. But if there are still more times than not that my kids just
want to be kids,
want to relax and do nothing, then that's what we're going to do.
Yeah. Do you find, one thing that has happened for me is I call it postpartum sobriety, because
Right.
because my sobriety is, since becoming a mom, is different. New
Yeah.
issues came up that I thought I had put to rest. I'm faced with, how to talk about, like, mine is a little, is nothing like yours. However, my story is out there, and there are podcasts, and there's a book, and there's this and that. And I wonder, like, okay, so how do I talk about this without encouraging it or showing that, oh, it's okay, mommy lived through it, or, all the different questions that come along. How are you dealing with some of those things? And do your kids ask you questions? Do you have conversations about it?
Yeah, we have conversations about it. My kids ask about it. I mean, my kids have always known that I've gone to meetings. They know that I don't drink. As they're getting older, it's obviously led to some more conversations. I was just talking about this the other day about how much I realize that the principles of the 12 steps influence my parenting in a very, very huge way. And I don't even know that my kids realize, well, of course they don't, because they've never sat in a meeting, but the amount of program and, spiritual principles and knowledge that they have been exposed to just simply by having a parent that's in the program, should they ever need to find a seat themselves, I think a lot of what they've been raised by, they will find is already in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is hard to talk about, and it's hard to, I don't want to glorify it, but at the same time, look, like you said, the book's out there. Like, the kids are going to read it. They get nosy. They want to know who their parents are and were. And, I always tell my kids, look, there's a lot of things I've done that I'm not proud of, but they've also given me a lot of life experience that I use to try and help you not make the same mistakes. But I also am very honest with my kids and tell them, like, look, I can give you all the tools in the world, but if you don't pick them up and use them, then it doesn't matter. This is on you. This is your responsibility. And that's where we're at right now. I think, like, the 10 and 12-year-old we're really hitting that idea of being responsible for your own actions and consequences. And it sucks. We don't like to learn that as adults, and, like, learning it for the first time as a kid when you're like, oh, you downloaded some stuff you weren't supposed to on your phone. Now you don't have a phone.
Yeah.
But it's the pandemic. But you knew you weren't supposed to, and you did it anyway. So, like, and that's a hard thing too right now, is this, parenting in a pandemic where you're like, I have to take the phone. It's literally the only thing that hurts, like, that has any sort of impact. But I feel so awful doing it that most of the time I give it back an hour after I take it, because I'm like,
like, they don't have, yeah, it's
right. But I do try and, like, let those principles guide me in my parenting and try and be patient and all this stuff. And, look, the last month has not been pretty around here. We've all been an emotional basket case, and it's not going well. But the thing that I do is that I've learned in this program is that I apologize immediately after I lose it. Immediately after I do something, and I tell them, I lost my patience. This is not the kind of person I want to be an example of for you guys.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Because I think it's really important that kids hear that their parents grew up.
Yeah, for sure.
And, talking about sort of my whole point in that is talking about the, human condition, even as a parent, where you're like, look, I screw up. I make mistakes. I've done a lot of stupid things. When I tell you things, it's not because I'm making them up.
Right.
It's because
I
have this experience, You
become
and I
credible.
also say too, like, there were things that my mom told me that scared the shit out of me. My mom was very, straight edge and whatever, but, she had friends in the 60s in high school, and there were things that I was terrified to do because my mom told me, the one time that her friend dropped acid or whatever, and she, lost her mind, there were those stories. So I'm like, I don't want to tell my kids stories to scare them, but I also want them to know that I am not an idiot, and I am very aware of the dangers that are out there. So when I say that something's unsafe, it's not because I'm trying to be lame mom. It's because I've done a lot of unsafe shit. And
that's for personal experience.
It doesn't always end well.
This is earned knowledge.
I had to tell my daughter this the other day about some stuff on the internet. I lost it at her, and then I had to stop really in the middle of it, and I said, "I'm sorry. I'm not mad. I'm scared.
Yeah.
I'm scared for you right now, and I don't mean to. I'm sorry that I'm yelling. I'm not meaning to be like that, but I'm just upset." And it led to a conversation between her and I, and me saying, like, "Look, I've been through some shit. I've seen some things, you know."
Yeah.
And it resonated, I think, a little bit differently, because I didn't try to deny that I had done some scary and dangerous things, but that I was speaking from a place of experience. And I think sometimes kids think that their parents have no experience. I think that was why there were a lot of times I didn't listen to my mom. So I was like, "You don't even know. You so weren't cool. You didn't do any cool shit." You know, and I think in being able to tell my kids, like, "Look, I'm speaking from experience. I'm not speaking from a place of like, this sounds like a bad idea. This is a bad idea. And here's why.
Here's why. And here's my experience with it.
And here's my experience." Right. Yeah. You know, and it was though, like, this look went over her face of like, oh, you know.
Right. Like,
you're not just telling me, but like you know.
Right. That legitimate.
You know, and then it was very vague, you know, but I think she knew enough of what we were talking about that it was impactful. And I think that's the thing, is like, it's just being honest with them and being like, "Look, I have experience. I'm not, you know, I'm not a sheltered little person."
I like to say, I used to be cool.
My parents or my kids are like, "Yeah, no, you weren't." I was like, "But I was."
I'm already telling my kids, but they don't even know what that means or what is happening.
I'm so not cool these days.
It's really painful.
But now I use that to my advantage and just try and embarrass them. So I'm like, well, if you guys don't think I'm cool anyway, even though I know I am, you guys think I'm not cool, I'm just going to embarrass you and dance.
That's what makes all the bullshit worth it, right? I mean, like, just annoying them or embarrassing them. That's how I get through it.
Yeah. I try and annoy my kids at least once a day.
It's very gratifying. Yeah. You have to.
It really
is. You have to, for sure. Mm-hmm. Have you guys dealt with any, or have you had to talk to, I mean, I'm sure you have had to at least talk about it, people stalking or people contacting them, and have you had people contact them?
Yeah, but we had to go through some stuff a few years ago that made some of those things very clear. So I can't get into too much detail, but no, they're aware. They know my security team well. You know, it's their uncle. So. That's what they call him. And they know that if anything he ever says to them in a moment of crisis, they absolutely are 100%
Good. That's really good. I know.
But they're still dumb. So they still do things on the internet that I'm like.
You're like, yeah, that's part of that.
That's part, right. That's,
still applies.
Still a bad idea. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it is. I mean, that's scary for them, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's like having to have a conversation without being scary, but with also reminding them that, you know, like I had said, you know, people know who you are.
Yeah.
You are not anonymous.
Yeah.
People will find you. People can find you. They know your name. And even if it's just other kids on the internet that want to, you know, follow you or whatever, they do.
Yeah.
Not just your friends, you know, and differentiate, and getting kids to differentiate between, but I want followers, which is the,
right.
You know, why does it have to be private, but I want followers? I'm like, but you're not, how do I explain this to you, child? Like, you're not famous. You don't need followers. No one is monetizing your fucking TikTok. Like, you know what I mean? Like, stop.
They're like, not yet, Mom.
Right. Yeah. But that's the thing, is that all kids this age, it's a competition. I have 2,000 followers. I have 2,200. I'm like, you all don't even know these people. It's one thing when it's a public thing, like, for work that I have to do, but you know,
it's interesting.
Even then I have
it's interesting because people say to me, you know, I've been to a gazillion treatment centers and I've done all this work, and people say to me, "Oh, Ashley," because I say my husband's in recovery, and so I'm always like, well, they're fucked. And people say, "But you'll know what to do. You'll know, but you know what to say." And I'm thinking to myself, like, there was no, I didn't have TikTok. I don't know. I didn't know what Tinder was. I had to Google it. Like, I am not prepared.
With every generation comes a whole new set of more horrifying things to get in trouble with than the laugh.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. So like,
for years, parents had to worry about their kids, smoking, and now
there's fentanyl.
They've got a Juul, and and there's fentanyl, but they've
juuling,
in their rooms, and they're never going to smell it.
Right.
It was really hard to hide smoking cigarettes in high school.
Totally. It's a rite of passage, damn it.
Right, like you reek of cigarettes. Why are you? No, I don't.
Out the window of your bedroom.
Right, yeah. But you couldn't even do that because it fucking reeked in your house. Now
can't smell it.
You can get away with that shit. So how do you?
Right, juuling. I didn't even think of that.
How do you balance, giving your kids privacy, which is important, and having to be in every single thing and in their account and reading every single message and knowing that they delete messages. And every new generation is faced with a whole other set of circumstances.
Yeah, this is my dad used to say, I know I'm never going to beat you because you have all the time and you spend all the time in the world thinking of how to outsmart me. So I'll never outsmart you because you have all the time to think about how.
Right, exactly. And they've also got,
new tools.
Accomplishments. Well, they've got new tools and they've got accomplishments.
Yeah.
They, like I'm not sitting around with my mom friends trying to figure out how to like bullshit the kids, but kids are like, okay, we've got a plan.
Totally.
And that should work. Because
it does.
That's just how it is. So I am not foolish enough to think that I'm going to, always catch every little thing that they do. But luckily, so far, they're both really dumb when they try to get away with it. So I feel like at least I can outsmart them a little bit based on some of my history, but it's going to not be long before they catch up and
they advance. Yeah. You got some time though. So the one thing that's going on right now is I'm finding out where I have neglected or where I have used being busy or, neglected doing work or whatever it is, like all the issues based on COVID. And it's just been very destabilizing for my recovery. What have you, like you're saying, like it's a shit show over here as it is, like emotional, like all these stuff.
Yeah.
What stuff has come up for you that you're like, what? Like during COVID, during being in your home?
My self-criticism is, I am really, really hard on myself. I expect myself to function without giving myself any fuel to do it. You know what I mean? Like why can't you do all the things with no, with no food, no sleep, no energy, no money, why can't you just pull it all off? And what a piece of shit are you that you're not, So like that has been the thing, I think, that and my anxiety of the unknown of what happens next. I just want to feel what's the date? Some solid ground. Right. When do I go back to work? Just, can I please know that, and that has been really hard for me. And I think has sent me off into a tailspin, is just dealing with my anxiety. And I struggle with it, physically. And so I'm having to, I'm not eating, I'm not doing it. So I'm having to, tell myself and call my nutritionist and call all of the things and also become very self-aware of new bad behaviors in regards to trying to find solution for my,
the
crazy
whackable
brain. Right. And so it's, all of the things, whether it be food or, exercise or sleep, too much or too little, or everything has to be perfect in the house, whatever it is, like those are the things that are coming up for me. And so, I'm having to write a lot. Luckily my best friend is not sick of me yet. And so I just call her. My boyfriend is absolutely wonderful and amazing and so patient and kind to me when I can't be kind to myself. And that has, that's made all the differences because I know I'm struggling at times with certain things. Like my sobriety is good, but there's a whole host of other, fun things to delve into in mental health. And, that's, I'm having to not beat myself up for realizing that I'm struggling.
Yeah.
That somehow I'm not immune to
a world pandemic
of this, Right. Yeah. I'm not, I guess I'm
Who knew?
apparently, yeah, who knew? I'm still human. So there's that. I still have feelings and emotions. And I'm also a very uncomfortable feeler. I don't like having feelings and emotions. So when I do, and when they come out very messy all over the place, it's a very out of control feeling.
Yeah.
So it's just, I'm dealing with loss of control right now, as we all are.
Yeah.
And what that looks like and how we remedy it, how we change it, how we make peace with it, all of that. And it's not pretty.
Yeah.
Last week I was a PMSing rage monster, and I called my mom, and I hadn't eaten, and I was just cranky and hangry and PMSy and crying, and the kids were being little demon people, and it was just all bad. And I was like, that's it. I am running away.
Yes.
Like, I just pictured myself getting in my car and just
into the sunset.
Later, bitches. Yeah. And I was like, yep, I can do it. I can totally do it. I probably wouldn't. In like 2 days in, then I'd feel bad. And then I was like, oh, I can't do that. And like, you start realizing the crazy thoughts that you have of like, I just need this to feel better.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I've gotten the runaway feeling when there's no world pandemic. So I can't blame.
Right. And that's the thing is, I get it too. Like, I
gotta go.
My boyfriend is my mom. I struggle really hard. Like, it's not easy for me. Past couple of years have not been easy for my anxiety and depression. And this is not helping.
Yeah.
And I have to be, and I just have had to be kind to myself. And it's like, you know what? If today you can't get out of bed and you're just kind of a weepy, puddly mess, then that's what it is today. And the kids are going to have to help out and pull it together too. Or I really try and schedule my mental health, breakdowns for days when the kids aren't here. It's a lot easier that way.
Good call.
To just lay in bed. Right. Just, to lay in bed, but trying to take that pressure off of myself for and I think we see it a lot right now too, is like, if you're not, writing your memoir, losing 15 pounds, getting in the best shape of your life, and, building a new at-home garden, then, time was never your issue. You're just a lazy fuck is basically what the meme says. And I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
That's not true. No. When life is humming along normally, I have energy. I have zero energy because I am exerting so much mental energy 24 hours a day just thinking about everything. And I forget that. And I think we all do. How exhausting anxiety, depression, the mental energy we spend spinning our own wheels. And then we get to the end of the day, we're like, why am I so exhausted?
Yeah, it's true. It's plus motherhood is just fucking exhaust. I mean,
it is
how people,
it's never ending. There's no, and that's, I think, been hard for me too, is in this pandemic, when I'm here with the kids, it's me and the kids right now. There's no help. There's no, there's no one to like pass a baton to. Yeah. There's not that there normally is anyway, but I have an amazing nanny who, when I'm working, is here with the kids a couple days a week. Plus they're at school with their friends and they're getting all of that energy out and all of that stuff. So it's no wonder we're all falling apart.
Oh yeah.
Of course we are.
Yeah.
I don't have, like, I can't tap out.
Yeah.
I have to be teacher, chef, driver, nurse, therapist, mom, security. All of the things to two people, security, right. To two people who are very much over me and don't want to hear me say one more thing to them, really. And now I that's it. I've got to be the one and only thing to them.
Right.
And it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And as moms, we always feel like, why am no one's doing anything for me.
Totally.
And I remember my mom losing her shit about that all the time. And as a kid being like, oh my God, what's mom's problem?
Totally.
Why is she freaking out? And now I'm like, I'm so sorry, Mom. Like, I'm so sorry. Cause it is a
thankless.
Parenting is a thankless job where it's like, you just get to deal with people all day that spew all of their negativity all over you. And you don't get to take it out on them.
Yeah.
You have to be loving and caring and compassionate to them anyway, because they're your children and you love them, but they're mean sometimes.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It is.
So if there's other parents out there listening, we're all falling apart. It's okay.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah,
You know,
it's okay.
Cry it out for a few minutes in the bathroom and you're going to be okay.
Yep.
The kids are going to survive this. And at some point we'll all laugh about it, you know, in a few years. We'll be like, remember when we almost just all strangled each other during quarantine? Oh, that was so funny. Yeah.
God. Yeah.
I hope my kids laugh at it. I hope they don't just look at me and go, yeah, no, that wasn't funny, Mom. That was really seriously traumatizing.
Yeah. It should be really, it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this and what happens, because I know that the recovery community is, I mean, everybody's struggling. Most people's reactions aren't fatal. And what was interesting about what you said, I've been thinking about how you, and I know this to be true in LA, there are small meetings where people who are in the business who have some celebrity go and they feel comfortable. And I didn't even think about that. The fact that that for you guys in that category, it is not the same for, I mean, I guess you could do those small groups online, but the going to a lot of,
and it's funny because in-person meetings, it's different. Because in-person meetings, it's somehow you find your people, you know your meeting, you go to your meeting, you can, you can blend in. There's something very, and I think everyone feels so self-conscious on meetings because you're just staring at each other, that I think it's a little bit different. But, I've made it work. I've spoken at meetings. I've, gone to meetings and just turned my screen off.
Yeah.
The biggest thing for me that I found is really just connecting with people and other people in the program. I still work, I have a couple sponsees that are out of state that I have worked with. So, I'm still working with them and talking to them and trying to find opportunities to be of service where I can, whether it's in the program or without. The tools don't change. They're still there. Got to pick up different combinations of them and figure them out a little bit.
Yeah, totally. Well, you're amazing. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate it. And
yeah, absolutely.
You have an awesome podcast called Never Thought I'd Say This with your best friend.
Yes.
Where you guys,
Celia Behar and I discuss our parenting fails on the regular basis. Yeah, every Wednesday it comes out, and that's on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, and any place you can get podcasts. So, and if you're not offended by the F word, then you can listen. But that's always the warning that my mom gives to people. She's like, the podcast is hilarious, but if you're offended by language, I suggest you don't listen.
I always laugh when there was talk about we have to put explicit if I say fuck on this podcast, but if I don't say fuck and we're talking about, using meth and cocaine, it's totally fine. Like when that's not explicit.
It's totally fine.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, well, how do you draw that line? But okay.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, we do that. And we're in our second season and we've been recording from home for the past few months, just doing it like we're doing now, making the Zoom and the podcast and the FaceTime and all of that work. And
I love it. Well, awesome. We'll put all that stuff in the show notes.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And then Fuller House comes out June 2nd.
Oh, yes.
So it'll probably be out by the time this is out.
So Fuller House premieres June 2nd. And where can people find that?
That's on Netflix.
Oh, well, there you go. Awesome. Well,
makes it easy.
Thank you so much, Jodie. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. Nice to talk to you.
You too.
Okay, bye.
This podcast is sponsored by Lion Rock Recovery. Lion Rock provides online substance abuse counseling where clients can get help from the privacy of their own home. They are accredited by the Joint Commission, and sessions are private, affordable, and user-friendly. Call their free helpline at 800-258-6550 or visit www.lionrockrecovery.com for more information.